What is up, bussers, cussers, and film discussers? Thanks for sitting down at the Messy Desk with me this week. Today, I want to talk to you about movies. You might have heard of them. They're going to be all the rage. It's a series of moving pictures, and you can hear them talking. They're going to call them talkies, not like The Chip, which are also very good and you should invest in early because those are also going to be quite big. But it's more of like telling a story visually. You know, you might have heard them on your radio. Now you can see them with your eyes. A little while ago, my Discord started a little movie club where once a week we, unsurprisingly, watch a movie. Now, you might not know this about me, but I really only have a few passions in life. One is being the best at music. Already did that. The second is being the best at YouTube. It's done. The third is I love movies. And you might be saying to yourself, Octodad, you didn't mention, like, loving your family or caring for your kids. And, you know, you have a good point there, but I have to be honest. I love my children. I love my wife. None of them make me feel quite like Paul Thomas Anderson's magnum opus, The Master, does as the credits roll. Sorry, kids. Sorry, Mom. You just don't have the chops of a Philip Seymour Hoffman or a Joaquin Phoenix. But I thought it would be fun to talk about some movies. Now, the first film that we arbitrarily decided to watch, Kelly Reichardt's First Cow. I hadn't seen any of her films before, and I really didn't know anything about it. A thing that a lot of my close friends know about me is that I am, like, the most allergic to spoilers you could possibly be. I don't even want to know what a movie is about. Just tell me it's good and I should watch it, and that's all I need to know. Anything else is too much. I'm expecting things. I don't want to expect anything. Just want to be blown away. So anyway, I just said, heck it. It was like the only movie that I heard good things about that came out in the year 2020 because we know what happened then and is still happening now, contrary to what some people might think. So I said, screw it, let's watch it, and then maybe I can make a video out of it by flipping the score. This is something I've been thinking about doing for a long time. Thought I was going to do it with some like favorite films of mine, but I figured this would actually be a way to kill three birds with one stone. One, it makes some headway into my incredibly long watch list. Two, it actually forces me to make some music. And three, it's a video concept that sounds fun to me. So we're just going to do it. So I took the score from the film, I flipped it, and I want to talk to you about the movie a little bit because I actually really enjoyed it. I have some thoughts about it, and you should watch it too. There's going to be some light spoilers, I guess. Maybe heavier spoilers. I don't know. Go watch the movie if you want to watch the movie. It's a really simple story, but really effective. That's the cliff notes. Anyway, let's just get into it. First, let's talk about the music because that's kind of what we're here for after all. The music, the score was very minimal. There was only a few little pieces. A lot of the music was diegetic, which is really nice. I think it kind of helped maintain the mood a little bit. But the piece that I chose to sample from is this really nice minimal guitar piece that was my favorite part of the score. And it sounds like this. It's pretty minimal, as you can hear, but it sets the mood perfectly. It's a simple story set long in the past. just kind of a simple, quiet story, and so the score fitting that perfectly is really important, and I think it does a really great job. So I took that and I sampled it. There's also this kind of field recording that is from the beginning of the piece that I sampled. It sounds like this. I did a classic thing that I do, which is I took the same sample and I flipped it a couple different ways. So I'm just going to mute everything that isn't the sample, and it sounds like this. There's 3 layers here, so I'll go ahead and just unmute them one at a time. So I have a little bit of delay, just sliced it up. I used a trick that my good friend Mark imparted onto me, which is a super simple trick, which is if you're having trouble playing your slices in a rhythm that makes sense to you, lay down some drums first. Actually helps to have a rhythm to kind of back you up, and it gets rid of some of these implied rhythms that are in the slices that you're trying to step away from. So I did that with this little snare pattern here. This snare is actually a part of a sample pack. Just put out a video about sample packs and ones that I've made there, and I shaved off the kind of first part of it here, but it sounds like this with the sample. And so something I knew that I wanted to do for this first pattern, which is these patterns are spread across a few parts. Something I knew I wanted to do was build up to the first kind of real pattern. So there's no drums other than the snare, and then there's a little bit of hi-hats that kick in halfway through the pattern. You can see here there's nothing on the first 2 pages, and then the hi-hats kick in. And we transition to the next pattern. So it goes like this. This is also a sample from a sample pack that I made. Go watch the video. And then you know how I do. I had to put a big fat 808 on that. I am using filter distortion as well as normal distortion from the lo-fi. And it just kind of, just beats the shit out of the 808, and it makes it a lot of fun. So that was the first pattern. It's nothing crazy. It's kind of just a simple build-up to what is really the heart of, I don't know if I want to call it a song. It's not really a song, but the heart of the piece, I suppose. And speaking of setting the stage, I guess we should talk a little bit about the story of the film. It's a really bare bones kind of story. It's about a guy who makes a friend, steals milk from a cow, and starts a business. And that's it. It's a minimal story. There's no burdensome exposition dumps. There's no giant character moments. It's a really quiet little film. And I think that that's important because I think what the film is doing is trying to kind of play into that expectation that we have that stories of the past, or the past in general, is this simpler thing that we can return to or look back on fondly. And I think that's a really natural tendency. I have that in my own life. I look back a few years and I think, wow, how much simpler was my life, when really it's always been as complicated as it's ever going to be. And that's just the way that life works. And I think Reichardt plays on that perfectly by giving us this really simple story to play with, and then sort of surprising us when we're able to sort of glean such large themes from such a small starting point. Because ultimately, at the end of the film, you kind of realize that Cookie, who is a cook, do you get it? And King Lou's story is a microcosm. It's a microcosm for the American experience. It's a microcosm for trying to become an enterprising individual in a system that is tailored to work against you. It's probably a critique of capitalism a little bit. It's these 2 guys who have a world of dreams and who tragically, spoiler alert, don't make that happen, don't achieve them. And it's not even really a spoiler to tell you that, because the film opens with a framing device of their bodies being found. Now, their bodies are being found as skeletons hundreds of years in the future, so you could say, oh, maybe Reichardt's going to pull a fast one on us and haha, it's going to be somebody else. But no, it's the main characters. They're dead. Of course they're dead. And like, the point is not even necessarily how they come to die or what causes them to die, but more that those 2 skeletons hold within them a lifetime of experiences and hopes and dreams, and that ultimately there's really nothing that simple about anything, ever. You know, it's that Sonder kind of thing, right? Everybody's life is as complex as your own. And I think that is kind of what the film is digging at. So it doesn't need a complex story because you as a human being can project your humanity onto these characters, onto their hopes, their dreams, and ultimately their failures. And I think the characters in the story work to kind of support that idea really well. They're simple. You really don't get much in terms of backstory. They don't have any really extended monologues. Their interaction is pretty sparse. I think it's kind of Reichardt's way of saying, you get it. It's a chill tale about dudes rocking and the system holding them down. Just enjoy it. Enjoy the quiet moments. Relish in the beauty of their environment. And, you know, brace yourself for the tragedy that you are aware has to befall them. It's a fate that they are doomed to, that you are almost preternaturally aware of. I don't know about anybody else who's watched the film or anybody who will watch the film, but as soon as I realized where the story was going, I was like, oh, okay, this is going to end this way. It has to. It's just, that's the way systems work. And it's brutal and it's unforgiving and it's life. And it's never simple. But speaking of things that are simple, let's go ahead and check out the next pattern in this project. It's mostly the same, but I added an additional layer of the score that I sampled a different piece of, and it kind of gives another dimension to the track. It gives a little something else going on, and it kind of carries with it this emotion that I feel like the first pattern isn't necessarily lacking, but it kind of pushes it forward a little bit more in a way that I think is really suited to the film, because when I first started watching it, and even as the credits rolled, I didn't really know what I thought. I didn't really know what kind of emotional impression the film had left on me. But after sitting with it for a while and writing some notes and thinking through it, it kind of hit me harder. And this pattern kind of comes in and hits me with a little more emotion than the previous one. So let's listen to it. And so that's the second pattern, and listening to it again now, having just talked about the film, I like it even more. I don't know how anybody else will feel about it, but there's something really emotional to me about imperfections in playing, and I think that the way that the slices kind of push and pull with the rhythm of the rest of the track kind of imparts that. I actually use a fun trick here that I've talked about in a previous video about multi-tracking the Octatrack, which I'll put here, which is basically I ran out of tracks to utilize, and so I resampled all the bits of the guitar sample down to one track. But rather than do that destructively, what I did was I moved to a new part in a new pattern and assigned it here, so I can go back at any point and still have the individual stemmed out versions of the guitar sample, but I can also save space in part 2 by having them all on one track. So kind of fun trick, easy to use, helpful when trying to compose on the Octatrack. Anyway, I digress. I'll go ahead and play the slices by themselves. They sound like this. It's funny listening back to that, how out of place and how like it doesn't really sound like anything at all, but when you put it in context with the other pieces, it sounds like this. There's a bit coming up here I really like. That part right there. What I did was I made one of these triggers only happen one of the two times, so that on the second run through, this slice extends all the way to trig 13 here. And it kind of just has, like I said, this really emotional, like someone just really strumming like emotionally on the guitar. I don't know. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully this isn't like completely lost on people and I don't sound like a crazy person. But if I do, well, you're watching a crazy person. I don't know what to tell you. That's really the only change I made. It's certainly not a finished project. Something I think it needs is some additional layer of percussion, like maybe a loop or something in there to kind of give it a little, to fill out the sound a little bit more, because it's a little spacious. But you know, that's sort of how the film is. It's sort of a lot of empty space, a lot of slow moments, a lot of, you know, kind of tiny, you know, tiny memories. It's like when you look back on a certain period of your life or a certain memory that you have and your brain is really just replaying the replay of the replay of the 100th time that you've looked back on this thing, and it feels like a moment could be stretched to infinity. And I think that is sort of what the film is trying to do, is really key into that feeling of nostalgia and of this sort of tendency that we have to oversimplify the past or assume that people's lives in the past were simpler than ours. Maybe they were slower. Maybe there was less going on moment to moment. Maybe they weren't on Twitter arguing with Cum Dumpster 69 about whether or not Joe Biden is based. You know what I mean? But people's lives were still full of complexity and terror and lost dreams and friendship and love and all kinds of stuff. And I think, before I fully conclude the video, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about the film's cinematography, because I think it's kind of one of its most notable aspects, and it really does a good job of maintaining that sort of thesis that I think Reichardt is trying to get across, in that it's very simple, deceptively simple, I would say, because it's a lot of static shots. People move through them, objects move through them, not vice versa. There's no steady cam going on in this. There's no 8-minute tracking shots. Birdman and The Revenant, this is not. But it's gorgeous. I mean, it's fantastic. And you look, normally 4:3 aspect ratio, kind of arbitrarily used, especially in like an A24 film. It's kind of a meme. It's kind of annoying. But I think it actually makes sense here. I think it works. Because, again, we have this sort of impression that, oh, this story's set in the past. It's going to be simple. It's going to be easy. How complex could it be? And it kind of keeps you in that false sense of security and lets the story play out that way in this kind of small, contained, micro moment in history of these two men just trying to be dudes and rock and sell some biscuits to people, and of course being crushed by capitalism. And at the end of the day, aren't we all being crushed by capitalism? So on that note, I think I'll end it. This is a new kind of video for me, and it's probably a little rough around the edges. It's kind of like making my first video all over again, but it's something I want to try to refine and do more of because I love film, I love music, I love making these videos. So to kind of meld those three things in a way would be really, really pleasing to me. So please do not hesitate to brutalize me down in the comments and tell me what could be better about this, because it's something that I want to get better at. I'm certainly no video essayist. I'm certainly not Max. I'll link to their channel there. You should go check them out. Their stuff is fantastic. But, I'm trying. And I love movies. And I want to talk to people about them. And watch a bunch of them. And if I can make a justification to do it for my second job here, I have it made in the sky. I have it made in lemonade. Do people say that? I don't know. They do now. Anyway, without wasting more of your time, I want to thank you so much for watching. You could have sat down with anybody on the whole internet today, but instead you chose to sit down with me, a man essentially pointing at a Pulp Fiction poster going,
"Is that cool?"
I hope you do think it's cool. And if you do, thanks for thinking it's cool. You're cool too. I will be back next week with another video. Don't know if it'll be another one of these. I guess it just kind of remains to be seen. But yeah, I think I'm going to make more of these in the future. So hopefully this is a good starting point to what will eventually be a more cohesive piece of work. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for watching. I'm Daniel. This is The Messy Desk, and I love you more than I love going to the movies, baby. I'll see you next week.